They found $1 million a year in profit just by doing some of this data analysis on their inventory tracking. The common theme across every expert was essentially that they're numbers driven. I actually prefer it when the numbers are bad because it's an opportunity to learn what not to do.
So if you're an e-commerce operator and you're setting up a dashboard, what are you setting up? What are you looking at?
If you want to drive marketing, is to be able to make good decisions quickly.
Marc Rodill is a strategic alliance consultant for 7- and 8-figure e-commerce brands. His unconventional approach shows them how to get a fast, effective 20% to 70% sustainable increase in sales. Today, his mission is to add as much value to brands as he can.
Google has a much larger advertising platform than Facebook does. And so there's a lot of opportunity there, literally word for word, duplicate our ads on Meta and run them as long as it wasn't they performed.
Marc, it's so good to have you on the show. I first ran across you as a person on LinkedIn maybe 4 or 5 months ago. I saw this guy posting good content, sharing advice, sharing like kind of some tips and tricks. And I thought, okay, this guy seems like he knows what he's doing. And then I think you DM'd me and how do we make that connection?
I think so, yeah, because I saw you had posted some stuff and I said, hey man, I've been interviewing experts just like you and I'd love to come talk about them. And you were like, I'd love to interview you. I think,
and now here I am interviewing you. That's how like we're flipping the mic here. But it's been so good to get to know you. And last week, geez, that was last week, man. It's still so much happening. But last week
feels like a long time ago. Yeah,
it does. It feels like a month, but it was literally basically this day, almost last week. But we were down in Dallas together, sitting on a podcast panel, and that you were hosting, and it's been so good to get to know you. And I know you have a ton of value to add to merchants, and I'm really excited for this episode. I have a wide open agenda of topics I want to talk about because I know you're helping brands make some serious impacts on their AOV. But before we get into that, give us the quick background on who you are, your story, and kind of how you became this e-commerce person.
Yeah, I mean, and that reminds me, so I'll tie it up at the end of how we met when I DM'd you. But I just have a long sordid tale, 15 years overnight success, right? Just got started with Googling how to make money online because I was a waiter at a restaurant, young, probably I think like 19, 20 years old, not real good at people skills, so waiting tables and not having people skills was a little bit nerve-wracking to me. But so I didn't want to do it anymore. So I Googled how to make money online like a lot of us do. Came across this forum back in the day. They're still running, but it was like the original internet marketing forum. And a lot of people like in the physical product space think like e-commerce, eBay was like the original, but it's actually not true. The truth of the matter is the real wild, wild west was ebooks. This is before you could even download a video or an MP3 because there's, you're trying to sign on to AOL. It's like, it crashes, you can't get in. But so I fell into that world. And for me, it made sense at the time because I didn't have a lot of money. So like inventory, creating products was sort of off the table for me. I don't come from I'm on the other side of the railroad tracks, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't have to talk to anybody, right? So I'm like, this is perfect. So I jumped into that world and essentially failed in business 8 times, a wide variety of businesses over a decade, essentially. Like they would always start off really well. I'd always make money. So I was always proud of myself because a lot of people never made $1 online. But I was under this illusion, like I was going to be a millionaire in 30 days, So I was telling this to my family. And they were always like typical, like the internet's a fad. You should get a job, go to college, join the military, And so I hate to say this, but I was always really desperate for my parents' approval. So I show it to them and they'd be like, this is a pipe dream. You should do something real with your life. And I would shut it down. But after like my 8th business failure, and this one was a local business, so I was repairing sliding glass doors for a living. It failed. And I had this epiphany, like, it's me that's the common denominator in this thing. Like I eventually just reached a place where I wasn't willing to do what was necessary to grow the business. And so got really big into meditation because I was on my last straw. I actually started meditating 3 hours a day, uh, hour and a half in the morning, hour and a half in the evening. And then like 6 months later, COVID hit. So it was super
Mm.
helpful to have that base to go through
Yeah.
that process.
Yeah.
But yeah, so eventually I just got fed up and I said, you know what? I'm going to do what I always wanted to do, which is work with companies. Because I had a seminar back in 2009 and I never knew this. I was really naive, but this very unassuming man came on stage and I was like, this is a laid back seminar. This is Frank Kern's Mass Control, the first one. For people who know, laid back surfer dude, very cool at the time. So very unassuming older gentleman comes on, straight laced, and I'm like, I'm not going to get any value out of this, but whatever. I'll see what he has to say. And as this whole world opened up to me, where he revealed that, yeah, you could work with companies, real companies that sell physical products. They have logistics, manufacturing, customer support. They're doing all these things. And you could work with them to help them grow their sales and profits, and they would pay you. And I was like, you can do that? I want to do that. So I started dabbling into that. And so after the 8 business failures, I finally went back to it. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do this. So I went and got 2 clients in the e-commerce space. Both of them were supplement companies, doing some email marketing campaigns for them. Basically just taking proven campaigns and then modifying them for these companies. And they were working really well. Within the first 30 days, they were working really well. And then all of a sudden, Hurricane Ian comes through at 2022, totally wipes me out. My town, I was in Fort Myers, Florida, the whole city, Cape Coral,
Ooh,
Fort Myers, Sanibel, Captiva, tourist hotspot of the world, beautiful tourist destination, complete landfill
too.
for like ever, so I
Yeah.
lost everything. And I ended up, I came across this young guy who was working for a big fancy e-commerce company that sold digital products. And I got in and one thing led to another. Within 16 months of working with them, we ended up generating $4.7 million on the back end, working with them in just the way that I've always wanted to work with companies.
Hmm.
And so I went through that experience for 2 years. We did about 5.5 million total during my tenure there. And then I said, what do I really want to do next? And so a lot of that was partnering that we did with them, strategic alliances, marketing campaigns. And I've always wanted to do all that stuff with companies, but I never felt like I was ready, so I had to be
Right.
ready. And
Right.
so I got ready and I said, I started talking to some of my mentors and my peers, and they were like, so you always wanted to do this. So, you can't do everything. So you learned a lot about partnering. Why don't you put on a little demonstration and see what you could do to add value to others by working together with lots of really top level experts? And I said, yeah, exactly. So I went out and I started reaching out to the top guys in the e-commerce space. And I said, hey, come on to I have an interview series I'm starting, 10-minute e-com success. I want your best tip, tactic, strategy. What is it that that adds the most profit
Mm.
sustainably? You can scale your business. It's not a growth hack. Someone could actually use this and see bottom line results. And
I love that.
yeah, after a couple failed starts, because I had different ideas. At first, it was going to be supplement based because that's kind of like my thing. But so brought them on, and 28 experts later, got a really nice series that I put together with some leading experts and great tips that I've essentially consolidated. Because when you have that much content, it can be overwhelming to know people are busy. So how do you focus your time? Right. So I indexed it by foundations, spotting areas of opportunity, driving traffic, increasing your conversion, doing back-end retention and marketing. So if you could we talked about this on stage at some summit when I brought you
Yeah.
up for the panel, which that's when we met in the DMs. I said, hey, I love what you're doing. I'm going to be going to some summit because Paul Chambers saw my series and invited me out. I'd love to interview you, and I'd love to come on your podcast and talk about what I've accomplished with the series. And you were like, yeah, killer. So I was there at Sub Summit the first day, first conference for me, and you flew in from Shopify Editions the second day, and
Yeah.
then Chase Clymer flew out, and I saw his podcast, and then I got to see you interview Bobby
Yeah.
DeMars, front row seats. Didn't have to pay for the ticket, but That was great. And so me and Bobby, after you and I hop off here, I'm going to be chatting with Bobby. We're going to game plan. So it was really cool.
He's a great guy. Yeah. You two men with great beards too.
Hey, appreciate it.
Yeah. So now you're not just doing like the podcast is fantastic. I love the concept of obviously that's like I love it. That's what we're about. These 1% wins, like 10-minute tips. Like sometimes it doesn't take a lot, right? Like we overcomplicate things and we think we have this mountain of lists. Like I could literally look at an e-commerce store and make a list of things for years that for long projects, but
Yeah.
small improvements added over time end up making a big impact, right? And so I love that concept. Now,
Yeah, exactly. Like what you said before we hopped on with Atomic Habits, which I've read too. You said like, hey, like he told everybody on his
yep,
blog and now his book, 1% improvement every day leads up to massive at the end of the year. And
yep,
so you said this on stage at Sub Summit. You're like, if you could take one or two big ideas from this conference and not just have them as ideas anymore, but actually get them into implementation, one or two big ideas can revolutionize your business.
totally, totally. Well, I always look back at. I like to ask people, looking back at the last year, what was the most impactful thing you did, or what moved the needle the most? And like in any business, you can often look back at the past year and kind of go, okay, well, there was this one campaign, or we figured out how to turn, customer emails into UGC content, which then became ads. And now we're running those in our AdWords and those we're seeing double conversion. And you know what? Like that might have only been a couple days of work figuring that out, but that one thing has an outsized gains, right? And so um I
Well, it
think with
almost always boils down to leverage, right? Like what you just said is
exactly.
leveraging your content to, you know, slightly tweak it and modify and place it into another location. If you find something else that's working, you
Yeah.
can double down on that. It doesn't take a lot of time. But so spotting those opportunities and then actually taking action on them is critical because everybody's drowning in content these days and the internet is like worse than ever before. People are pumping it out because AI has really just changed the game.
Yeah. So let's I think what would be amazing. I've got a number of ways we can go here, but given that you started this show, and you've talked to a number of experts in the States, I'd love to pick your brain on a little bit of it and pull out some of those learnings. Like, what would you say is a common theme among all the experts you've talked to? Like, is there any common themes that are consistent across them?
Wild theme. I sort of didn't expect this, but in hindsight, it makes total sense. But you get on with these experts and basically, a really good person to telegraph this is Cindy Thomason. Just to start it off, Cindy Thomason wrote Profit First for e-commerce sellers, and she's an accountant, Profit First certified accountant. And she was talking about like differentiating yourself in business. First of all, is putting more of yourself into your business, making it personal, and stop looking at what everybody else is doing to see if like, oh, maybe I should copy that, but you don't have any context behind the scenes of whether or not that's working. And so if you want to differentiate yourself, bring yourself into the business. But on top of that, you really need to be focused on the numbers, the cash flow, the profit, right? And she's profit first. And she said, I always made a big deal about focusing on profit. That's really important. But she found like a lot of things don't make it onto your P&L statement, like your inventory before it's sold, owner draw, debt, interest, things like this. And so she said, getting a handle on your numbers, getting a handle on your cash flow, knowing what is actually happening is super important.
Yeah.
And the common theme across every expert was essentially that they're numbers driven. They're focused on the numbers that
Mm.
matter,
Hmm.
making, like Chase Clymer came on and he was like, I've doubled e-commerce stores, uh, sales and profits over and over and over again just by focusing on AOV, conversion, and traffic. That's it.
Hmm.
Right.
Hmm.
But unfortunately, what they all agreed on is that shockingly, like a lot of e-commerce store owners don't know their numbers.
Hmm.
They don't know the critical day-to-day numbers because as Jesse Pujji said, I don't know if you know Jesse, but Jesse
I
came on
do.
from Bootstrap Giants, Andrew Warner's partner, from Mixergy.
Yeah.
He said, like, I really encourage people. The number one thing I encourage them to do is obsess about the numbers But what I found is that they feel bad about the bad numbers and good about the good numbers. So they'll look at the good ones, but they won't look at the bad ones. But he's like, I actually prefer it sometimes when the numbers are bad because it's an opportunity to learn what not to do. Right. And sometimes what not to do really moves the needle more than what to do. So,
Totally, totally. And numbers, uh, if something is too good, it also often means there's not an opportunity there. But like when we look at certain cohorts of customers that have bad retention, or a certain a channel that you're getting customers from, that their conversion is, 0.5% versus from another channel, it's 5%. So that I see that as an opportunity. So why is it only 0.5% from our Facebook ads, for example? What is it about that channel? How can we optimize that? So like finding these numbers is, I think too many people try to use data to validate their assumptions versus
yeah, exactly.
actually uncovering opportunities, right? You have
Well,
to
a lot
go
of
in
times they
blind.
think what they'll do, like Jesse actually said, was like a lot of people will aggregate their numbers so then they can see at a glance that, hey, this thing's converting or it's producing profit. But what they like to do, because he started this company where they actually help VC companies make purchasing decisions on these brands to see if it's a
Mm,
purchase, and they can't get the data from McKinsey and things of Goldman because McKinsey and Goldman claim they are really good at doing the digital marketing numbers, but actually they don't really know as deeply in there either. They know the rest really well, but what he likes to do is he'll de-average them. So he'll take them and actually split them up. So like you said, you could find out this one's 5%, this one's 0.5%. Right.
yeah.
So maybe you stop doing the point 0.5, but if you aggregate it all to get you aggregate it, you're still at like 4.8% across the thing. You're like, that's great. But as you start to scale that, you can't get the incremental gains you're looking for because you're scaling the bad stuff too.
So if you're a e-commerce operator, and you're setting up a dashboard or spreadsheet or however you're tracking it of your key metrics, what are you setting up? What are you looking at every day, every week?
So that's not my wheelhouse. So, but what I do is I recommend that they do that. Right. So
So,
Chloe Thomas came on from e-commerce master plan and she's
mhm,
like big
she's
into
awesome.
marketing. She's killer. But
Mhm.
she's like, oh, I wish I could share you some cool way to do your Facebook ads or a YouTube video or something. But she was like, at the end of the day, the single best thing you can do if you want to drive marketing is to be able to make good decisions quickly. Right. And so
Mhm.
she's always like, you need to find a way with tools, whatever it takes to pull all of your data from all these different locations. Right. So your product data, your marketing data, your customer data, and consolidate them into dashboards. And she made a solid recommendation for Bright Pearl at the end of her interview. And they do
Mm.
great data driven, AI driven data analysis to take your inventory and track it properly. Like Ron Shaw, who came on my series, we didn't talk about this in his interview, but later, right after he came on, he pumped out a newsletter where they're doing like 50 or $60 million a year in sales, and they're in Walmart now. They bootstrapped their way up to Walmart. But
Yeah.
so he said like we
Obvi is the
added
brand you're talking about, just for listeners.
yeah,
Yeah.
obvious
Yeah.
flavored collagen supplement company. Back in the day, they were like the only ones doing this, but
Yeah.
you
There's a
know,
ton now, boy.
things
It's
change. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but they found $1 million a year in profit just by doing some of this data analysis on their inventory tracking, right? Just tracking inventory properly. So,
Mhm. It's crazy. Collagen is such a great thing because it's one of those things, we have a number of brands that use our subscription tools for it, and you have to take it every day, otherwise it's not effective. I don't take it personally, so I don't, but that's like, I know, if you have your protein powder here a couple days later, it's fine, but apparently collagen loses its effectiveness if you don't have it every day. So it's like this built-in regime that you have to follow, and so
well, that's a great for supplements. I mean, a lot of supplements act like that. I had a guy on that sells like men's and women's optimize your body type of supplement. And so most of these things you do need to take every day. But even a protein powder, if you're really hitting the gym and you're not taking your protein, like you're not going to get the results you're looking for.
yeah, totally. And that's all in how you educate your customers on it too. Like, they should be taking it every day because it's like, yeah. Um, I think I just on the analytics thing that because it comes up a lot. A lot of times merchants ask like, well, what should I be tracking? Um, I do think we could do a whole show on it, but I always think it comes down to track what lets you make decisions, right? And so you kind of
Exactly.
said it, like what makes decisions quickly. So like there's some analytics like what's my traffic on my store? Like, okay. That's a fine metric. It's a little bit of a vanity metric. Like if I saw that I had 1,000 visitors last month and 1,500 visitors this month, that what decision am I making from that? Like, is it good traffic? Is it bad traffic? Why did it go up 500? Am I getting not qualified traffic? Are they buying? Like, is one channel more, one channel less? So just like
It needs to be in
sure.
context. Yeah. So Chloe's like, what I asked her, I'm like, so what do you track? Like metrics, what exactly is it? She's like, everything. But so once you track everything, you might have everything being tracked on the back end, but then you select certain areas of focus. Like she said, a lot of brands that she's talked with, they waste a lot of time Monday morning, like compiling data. So then they could make good decisions. And like all of Monday is compilation. But she said, if you just use the tools and set things up properly, it will compile all that data for you. And then you could just look at the numbers that you're focused on that matter in the context that you need to focus on them.
Right.
And that was the biggest thing is like every single expert was like, we're shocked how often people just don't know.
Yeah. So what would you say is um a big opportunity right now for and an opportunity can be positioned as like I always say it's a challenge or an opportunity like when someone's struggling with something like even like an employee at Bold instead of saying uh you're struggling with this thing, it's here's an opportunity. So sometimes like a challenge actually is the opportunity. So what are some of the biggest challenges or opportunities for brands right now, maybe based off of some of what you're hearing from these interviews?
Right. So that with that foundation of just being obsessed about the numbers, knowing what they are, knowing the ones that matter, and then really being honest with yourself when the numbers aren't good and facing it. Like Jesse said, like they just won't face it because they feel bad about it. And that just, it handcuffs their growth because in the bad numbers, there's often so much opportunity. So, you really got to get right with that. Once you get right with that, the opportunities, because e-commerce is one of these industries where it's very complex and complicated and difficult, and the competition grows every day. So you're
Mm.
you're you're running into lots of issues with profitability when you scale, cash flow, tracking all of this stuff. But so in my mind, not being much of someone who works on the front end, I work on the back end. I brought on 2 meta ads experts who I was thinking, okay, cool. These guys are going to talk about how to do a cool way with your meta ads to drive results. So like the first one was Andrew Ferris from AJF Growth,
Mhm.
formerly of the Common Thread Collective. And he had an opportunity where he worked at Kalo, which was like a rings company, worked his way up to Common Thread as a marketing guy, and then was moved over to 4x400, which is their sister company. It's a holdco. And he scaled them from 6 figures to 8 figures in growth. And he said, that was some of my biggest lessons because I learned that it didn't matter if I scaled them to 8 figures, because what we learned is if you don't have your P&L right, if you don't have your inventory right, if you don't have these metrics, then a lot of times you might be growing on the outside. It looks good to the public, but in behind the scenes, you're like dying because you don't have the numbers fixed. And he said, after all these years going through that process and working with brands, the biggest area of focus is fixing the P&L, doing P&L design, right? So figuring out your logistics, your shipping, your manufacturing in a way that it's actually profitable. And
Mhm.
same thing with, there's this really cool guy that I made fast friends with on LinkedIn, Stephen Pemberton. Stephen worked with a company at one point called 10 Tree, where they like plant 10 trees for every whatever.
I have a lot of their clothing too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they added him and his partner Josh added $750,000 in revenue to them in 1 quarter. And the way he did it is they built enough trust with them where they said, look, if you really want us to help you, we need to get access to all of the numbers and all of the data. If you're not willing to look at it, we are. So he went in
Mm.
there and they found these different areas to optimize not only their logistics, but their messaging across all channels. And so aligning that messaging is critically important these days. It's not like back in the day in the wild, wild west of e-commerce where you could just run an ad to a order checkout page, make a profit and call it a day.
Yeah.
And a lot of these brands experienced that maybe 5 years ago when there was gold in the streets. Like I brought on Pretty Boy. Pretty Boy broke into men's skincare and they said, there's no such thing as a 4 or 5 CAC anymore. So what we've learned is we got to be a real business. We have to have alignment throughout every step of the process of the customer journey, front end, middle of the journey, back end of the journey. And so that's the biggest opportunity is just dialing that in, and that could add a lot more profit to the bottom line.
That's such a great takeaway. And if one step of it feels disjointed, it collapses. One of our 1% win episodes a couple days ago. Actually, I don't think this one's not out yet, but um, I can't remember who I was talking to, but it had this kind of revelation that like generally we think social post, someone sees a post, clicks on post, goes to your product page, maybe buys, right? That's actually not the journey at all. The journey is they see your post, then they go to your profile. So if it's Instagram, that's I see your post, I'm going like, okay, click on the user, go to the profile, go through some of their posts on their homepage, read some of their highlights, watch their stories. If they look legit and if you've told the story well on the profile, then they go to your site.
Right.
But the flow is often we just think from post to product page, and some brands have a great profile, but I think like it's a big missed opportunity is really not having a ideal account profile on whatever social profile or platform you're on, right? And so like thinking about and if the to your point, if the messaging is different, if you're speaking a certain way in a certain tone and in a post, but then on your profile or on your bio links and you go there and it feels different, if it feels disjointed,
Right.
that trust factor goes down and you're basically screwing your conversion opportunity, right? Like it has to flow.
There's really like 4 layers of trust there before the sale because people think, oh,
Yeah.
I run an ad, they go to my website and they buy. But, the first layer of trust is that first contact, that first advertising contact where they see your content and they go, you know what, this looks like a cool product. I trust that maybe it could be effective for solving my problem or helping me achieve my goal. So they go, maybe, right? And then they go to the website, and then the website has to telegraph the same thing: product demos, good copy, the way you write it, the brand
Yeah.
messaging, and the color scheme, and everything has to be aligned to that first point of contact. And they have a little bit more trust, and from there, you want to capture the email, right? So you could build a lead list and have some prospects. So they have to have enough trust from the ad to the website to go, you know what, I'll give this a chance. They're offering an incentive for free content or a discount. I have enough trust with this that I'll exchange my email to learn more with whatever they're sending me, like a free series of emails or content, a course, whatever. And so they go there, you got that third layer of trust. Fourth layer, now you're finally at, okay, I think I will take out my credit card and buy. So once you reach that point, the game's not over. They have to have a good experience every step along the way, from the purchase to the fulfillment to the unboxing experience. And then, like you said, and you say a lot at Sub Summit, that is not yet a customer, a member, a subscriber. That is just a lead who you now have the opportunity to build that trust with. You're just
Right.
getting started when you make that purchase.
Man, I'm so glad you were listening at some. It's so true. It's when your customers buy something from your site, they're not really a lifelong customer by any stretch of the imagination. They're trying your product, they're testing it out. Because remember, you're not a retail store. They can't pick it up, they can't hold it, so they want to see it. They want to touch it, feel it. And then you've got this opportunity from the moment they buy to really optimize the whole experience, like from day one, from second one, from when they purchase to that order confirmation. What's that experience? The 2 to 3 emails I believe that they should get day one, not just one, but then scale it down after that. And you educate them, you build trust, you tell your story, you reinforce the value of the product. So by the time they get it, it's like someone telling you about the wine you're about to drink or the steak you're about to eat and how it's farmed or raised or the grapes. By the time you get that wine, it's going to taste better because you know so much about it and the whole experience versus just like if they came out with a glass of wine and here's our house red, that house red could be amazing, but they just called it the house red and you won't, it's a proven fact. You won't appreciate it and value it. You won't tell people about it. You won't recommend it to friends because the story's not there. Right. So,
Right. Yeah, that just helps them feel better about their purchase,
exactly. Yes.
aside from the
Yeah.
quality of the product.
Yeah. So, I want to dig into another area like that comes up a lot, and you've probably got some insight onto this is, just traffic acquisition. Last few years, obviously there's a lot going on. I mean, the iOS updates, that was a couple years ago now, but I think some brands are still feeling the effect of that. But more recently, like Temu buying up every ad on Facebook and Instagram, rising the cost 30-40%. Um, acquisition is becoming like traffic acquisition is becoming harder and harder. What are some of the strategies you're hearing for generating more like good quality buyer traffic?
Yeah, buyer with high intent and
Exactly.
then, something that's not eating you alive, essentially. There's lots of ways to do it. Now, one of the things I really like to talk about, because I didn't know this when I brought him on, but some people know this guy. He's a little bit maybe more behind the scenes, but not at the Google events. But so Frederick Valets, I interviewed Frederick, and basically I learned because I don't play in that sandbox of the front end advertising. I never have. I've always done the way I've always generated traffic is through partnering, essentially. But so he comes on and he says, not a lot of people know this because they don't think about it much, but that's just because Facebook has a captured audience on social. Facebook has the largest social audience in the world. Everybody's on there. So when they think of advertising, they think of Facebook because that's what they see all the time. And so Meta's huge for that reason. But the truth of the matter is that Google has a much larger advertising platform than Facebook does. Facebook has the social audience, but Google still has a larger network. And so there's a lot of opportunity there to get it right. But Frederick was one of Google's first 500 employees. And he was the executive who led the creation of Google AdWords. So if there's anyone who knows AdWords better, it's Fred. And so Fred left and he ended up starting a software company where Google aggregates the data. Kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier with numbers. Google aggregates your data so you can't separate what's performing, what's not performing as well as you could. And so he created a software that actually now splits that data back apart, and it does it automatically. And so kind of sort of back to dashboards, it sends you the information and it tells you what to do to optimize and where your areas of opportunity are. And so since he's launched, he now has like 12 offices and 12 continents across the world, more than 70 employees or something. And, similar to your companies being large, from doing smart things. And he's managing like $5.3 billion in ad spend for his clients. And so I said,
Crazy.
that's cool. Can you give me an example of a company that, you revolutionized their marketing on ads? And he said, yeah, we had lots of them, obviously, because we're managing so many billions of dollars. But said, a good example of this for e-commerce, a lot of our clients are e-commerce, he said, was a company called Barbecue Guys. So like BBQ Guys. And by splitting this data using software, automating because you could see like, okay, my ads are performing really well on these types of platforms and not so well on these ones. But sometimes they're not performing so well on these ones because we haven't optimized for it, but the numbers are good, they're just small. And so if you're on videos by accident and they're performing, but you're not doing anything with it, you could double down on it. And so that's what they did with them. and 300% lift in
Wow.
ROI doing that. And so don't sleep on Google, basically, is a big tip. And then Ron Schaub, this was super cool. Ron, if anybody knows anything about Ron, he's got the Chew on This podcast. They pump out a newsletter. They're very big on building in public, which I love, that sort of like sneak peek behind the curtains of the numbers, what's working, what's failing. Because they had a
Yeah.
couple brands that failed, a coffee brand and a pet brand. They're like, you know what? Sometimes you don't always win. But for what they discovered very early, he said to me, he's like, I've never really shared this before much. So I was like, okay, that's crazy because you share everything. He's like, yeah, well, so here's the thing. You asked for the biggest thing that we do, that we've done, that's like sort of moves the needle really big, is from the very beginning, we met a guy that was doing international. So international logistics. And we got in with them. And what we accidentally discovered is that we could copy and paste, literally word for word, duplicate our ads on Meta and run them in other countries on Meta.
Hmm.
So as long as it was an English speaking country where the culture aspired to be like a Western culture,
Mhm.
then we could run the same exact ads with no changes and they performed.
Hmm.
And so every year we did it from the very beginning of our launch. It just continued to grow every year because we handled the logistics properly. He gave lots of tips on how to do that. Um, Essentially, he's like, it's 32% of our business, our 50 to $60 million per year business. A third of it's international. So
Wow.
you don't have to do much with the ads if you're already on Meta other than run them internationally. And I shared that with a guy that I met at Sub Summit Watch Gang. We're game planning. And he's like, yeah, we want to get international. Like, who is it that you should connect with? And so I told him, and he's like, oh, yeah, that guy's on our radar. So we're going to be doing that. But you could just copy the ads. I'm like, yeah, you could just copy the ads.
And just translate them, but keep the same.
No,
Or
they're
not even sure. Oh, if they're English speaking. Sorry, you're
English
right.
speaking countries, same exact ad.
Huh. Crazy. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot. I'm in Canada, so we typically buy from a lot of places in the world. Like I ran an online store since '98, and um, I would say that only usually about 5% of my customers were from Canada.
Right.
So like it's quite normal that like we are used to shipping across border, buying across the border. Half the stuff we buy comes from the US. It's just a normal part. Like we go back and forth with the US all the time. But a lot, like I don't know what the percentage is. Like it's the vast majority of brands that we work with at Bold that are in the US, they only sell within the US.
Right.
And they kind of and to be fair, the US is 10 times the population, more than 10 times the population of Canada. So you can build quite a big
Well, it's cold.
business just within the US. Um, in Canada, you kind of, Canada is the same population as like the state of California. So like we kind of have to sell outside of Canada if you really want to grow big. But I think because of that, a lot of brands just don't look outside the US because they think it's too much work or it's not, but it's not.
Look at the world, right? I mean, what is there, like 6, 7 billion people on Earth? Not all of them speak our language, obviously, but there's like whatever, 350 million people in the US. If you can find English speaking countries overseas that aspire to be Western, then you increase your total addressable market, you know?
Yeah. And there are some considerations. I'm actually going to find a good guest for this because like there's some things you want to, as far as like logistics and taxes and regulations and all that. But everyone I know that's done it said it's generally always been worth it. Um, and there is a bit of effort, but you know what? That bit of effort is often what your competitors aren't willing to do. Right. So like that's what separates you. And that's what get like the guys at Obvi. That's obviously, and it's worked for them.
Yeah, obviously.
That's a great, obviously, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
I
no
see what
pun
you did
in
there.
yeah, right? But so there are things you run into because you do go up, your shipping, handling, fulfillment, logistics process does increase as it
Yeah.
has to. And then you do have to treat those customers differently, he said, like, to speak to like subscriptions and members. They found that they could not get them to stay sticky
Mhm.
just because they purchase differently. And this might come down to just their total allowable dollars that they have. He said they buy, but they don't buy the way we would like them to buy traditionally in the US. They won't stay subscribed as far as we've been able to discover. But what they will do is they'll save up for a purchase and then they'll buy when they're ready. So they did have to modify like their email marketing campaigns on the back end to, adapt to that.
Right. So that's getting more traffic, quick win, consider international. What about converting more traffic that comes to your site? Any learnings from your guests on how to either just, maximize the conversion, increase it, optimize it? Any
So many things. Yeah. So it's a marketing series, marketing and sales business series focus. So there was a lot of conversion experts. There was a lot more traffic experts too. But so those were the two biggest ones that I say like big wins, easy. And also like in most brands wheelhouse, there's a lot of them are
Yeah.
doing paid advertising. But there's things you could do with SEO that were in there, to optimize for that. But so with conversion though, aside from traffic, like, like Kurt Elster came on, which is one of my favorite guests. I was very nervous actually to meet Kurt, and it came across in the video. I just came right out with it. I was like, I'm very nervous to meet you because Kurt is very charismatic, funny, tells really good stories. He makes e-commerce like engaging with his
Yeah.
personality. So I always
Yeah.
aspire sort of to model that basically.
He's awesome. I agree.
And he also basically created in many ways the e-commerce industry because he's like the first podcast ever. And I mean, I think he started back in like 2012 and he's just been weekly ever since. And so he really kind of like inspired people to get into e-com, like, hey, if you want to have life, financial freedom, like get into e-com, there's a huge opportunity. And so that is just obviously snowballed to this day. It's become a very different landscape. And so that's kind of the bad news. Like the bad news is you can't just run ads, get a customer, like you said, that's not a real customer. It's just a lead. Back in the day, you could get away with that. You sell your product and you say goodbye. But the bad news slash good news is now you got to be a real business. And so if you become a real business, then there's huge opportunity for people who do things properly. But don't sleep on your website foundationally, like Kurt said. He's like, we see this so many times, like brand comes to us and they want to increase their conversion. We start with like foundationally, what's your website doing when it loads? Like he said his favorite test for a brand is like, and this was like Thanksgiving, I think, around the time that we actually spoke. And he said, here's my favorite test. Like, can your drunk uncle on Thanksgiving, when you hand him your cell phone, can he understand and navigate the website so easily that even he can make a purchase? Right.
Mhm.
And so, and the other thing is like, if it's and it has to be like your grandmother's old phone. Right. Because he's like, you'll be surprised how many consumers are still operating on an older phone
Oh,
model.
totally.
And if your website doesn't load quickly on an old phone, you are losing so much money. So he said, fix your navigation process. Don't put about me at the top. Make everything above the fold. You need a lightning fast website that operates on these old phones. And just doing something so small, because like over time, a lot of brands, the more you build, the more like tools and software you have, and the more bloated it gets, it really does impact your conversion rate.
Yep.
Now to speak to that, speaking of Kurt, he actually started his company with this guy named Nick. Nick DeSabato was his first episode, and Nick's kind of a kooky guy, but so is Kurt. But these guys are childhood friends, and Nick comes on and he was like, "You asked for my best thing, I'll give you it." I call like when he does design. So Nick says he's like, "I hate the term CRO. I don't like it at all." But unfortunately, because of that, I've developed a reputation for it because I have quadrupled the conversion rate of my competitors more than 24 times in 5 years doing design that converts. And he said, my secret is I call the customer. All right. So we incentivize the customer to get on the phone with me. I peel back the curtain and I ask them about their experience. And he's always like, I want the customers who really care about the brand. So they're
Mhm.
kind of like, if they're kind of upset, that's good because they
Yeah.
believe in your brand, but they know that you can do better. And so
Yeah.
he'll ask them, go deep on some questions after being a little light, creating some space for them to open up. And he said, I don't do anything with your website until I talk to them. And then we get on a call with like the executive board and we say, based on what they are actually saying, here's what we could potentially do. And so he's like, the biggest thing that we've done to really move the needle, aside from optimizing design and like heat maps and stuff, is we just take the actual words they're saying and we put those into the headlines and the product descriptions. And so that one simple thing
Mhm.
has quadrupled conversion. And
Mhm.
he's contributed to billions of dollars in sales across brands doing that. So that's the two best things.
I love that. I'll just add one thing to expand to that because um, I've seen a number of brands use ChatGPT and they load in all the product reviews, and so they'll take like thousands of reviews, it can even be hundreds, doesn't have to be that many. Uh, Put it in spreadsheet, doc, PDF, whatever. Throw it into ChatGPT. Ask it to find all the benefits and reasons people buy and things people love about this product, and create a product description using a benefit first um, language rather than like features and whatever, uh, and position it against competitors in a way that uh, that kind of I forget how the wording was, but like calls out how competitors are not as good. So
Right.
so
Without tearing them down, right? So it's
without
just
tearing
like
them down, but
it's like
so
a
what they do.
USP. Yeah.
So yeah, so what they do is they take the positive reviews from your product, take all the negative reviews, and this involves a little scraping, but take all the negative reviews on a direct competitor's a product, things they don't like out. So I don't know, say you sell a coffee maker, and the negative reviews on your direct competitors are all around. Like if you go to all the 1 stars and it's all like takes too long, takes a minute to warm up. Uh, I could get coffee faster through a drive-through, or I don't know. They take all of these,
Yeah.
summarize them, and then you take the benefits of yours, and it's like coffee when you want it that tastes great, and doesn't make you, and you don't need to read a book while it brews or something like that. So like you can hint at it's better than your competitors without saying like, unlike our competitors, I do this. Like it's, you know what I mean?
Well,
Great.
that's a good point, and it reminds me of something that Alex Hormozy said that I watched in the video the other day. Because the other thing you were doing is you're being hyper specific about their experience, and
Yeah.
so that builds trust when you understand like their actual experience of using that product. And he said, a lot of companies they do like marketing speak. So it's just like the same old that everybody else is doing. So his example was like, if you're selling weight loss, don't say, "Are you overweight?" Because that's so trite and that's what everybody does. It's like, so you're trying to sell me something basically. And he was like, the way that you say it in a way that connects with them, that makes them understand where you're coming from is, do your legs rub together when you walk up the stairs and it makes a rash? Or, do you ever find yourself out of breath and sweating in places that you didn't even know you could? Things like that work a lot better than just like this trite marketing phrase, "Are you overweight?" And you sort of just did that there kind of naturally, right? Where you're like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
are you waiting for the coffee to brew while blah, 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 So I thought that was pretty good.
While you read a novel.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I did a one of the like daily 1% episodes of the day was like about the first 60 seconds. I have this kind of belief that the first 60 seconds when someone hits your website, I don't know, for anyone listening here, go back. I think it's the 1% win number 6 or 7, I can't remember, but when someone hits your website in the first 60 seconds, they need to feel 3 things. So yes, there's like trust, authority, you need some logos, your messaging, but they need to feel 3 things. They need to feel that, oh my God, that's me. They need to like say that in their head, like, oh my God, that's me. So like what you just said is bang on. Like, not are you overweight, not it's like, are you tired of your legs, tired of the burning legs after you walk around all day from in your thighs or whatever it is, right?
Yeah,
You're
and
like,
that's
oh my
just
God, that's
Hormozy,
me. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't take credit, but so it's a very common thing in direct response marketing is the more you understand the customer's problem and what they're experiencing, the more they have this sense like, oh, this person gets me. So if they understand my problem really well, then clearly they probably understand the solution really well too. You'll see in Hormozy's videos, like in the comments all the time, people are like, man, I feel like this guy just speaks to me in every video. Like he knows
Yeah.
exactly what I'm going through.
Yeah. It's okay, so it's the June 4th one. But yeah, so it's, oh my God, that's me. And then the next thing they need to feel is I'm not alone. And then the third thing is you can lead me. So, oh my God, that's me. And then I'm not alone. There's others going through this as well too. Well, the good news is, you know, 42%, like 42% of America, not the good news, but 42% of Americans actually struggle with the same thing. So you're not alone. And then something along the lines of like, this is actually why we developed this cream because I suffered with it and family members, and it affected my daily life. I couldn't play with my kids. I couldn't jog. I wanted to get back to the things I love. So I developed this. So it's like, oh my God, that's me. I'm not alone and you can lead me. And they need to somehow feel that. Like it's like, and so yeah, I love that. I love that concept.
Yeah, unfortunately, when we have a problem, a lot of times we get kind of like myopic and in our own world, and we feel like separated, sort of in survival. We're trying to like solve a thing, but we're embarrassed or we feel shame or guilt, so we don't really want to open up about that. And it could feel
Yeah.
like you are all alone when you're not sharing or reaching out to others because you just, scared that maybe someone won't understand you. So I could see, yeah, that's super powerful.
Yeah. And just so many websites if you go to right now, like they'll all they're doing is talking about how great their benefits are, how great the product is, how great the features are. And I don't like land on their site and go, oh my God, that's me. Or something, like in this, it applies to everything. It can be, say you sell a drink and, maybe you're tired of waking up hungover and not functional the next day. And then so maybe you're selling like a non-alcoholic drink or something. So like it could be like, yeah, that is me. Okay. Um, other people are the same and this is the solution. Like it applies to everything. Um, yeah. So it blows my mind though, how many e-com websites don't do that. You get so in the trees that all you want to do is like sell, sell, sell. And your website isn't just to sell. Your website is to identify and build a relationship. They need to see that you're a solution, see that they're not alone, and see that you can lead them.
Right? Ties right back to trust.
100%. Before we run out of time here, I want to ask you what's your favorite strategy? So we've pulled a lot. Like, and even if we ended this episode 20 minutes ago, I feel like, I say like if you get one piece of advice from an episode, that's a win. There's probably been like 6 here already. So we could hang up and that's good. But before we go, like, what's been something that you really thought was like from anything, in any category of any episode that you think is the most important or that you just appreciated the most?
Well, so, what I do is I focus on one thing and one thing only as a service provider. So I have a specialized knowledge where, brands, companies, businesses, service providers, it doesn't matter what you sell, who you are, who you sell to. Many times they're doing all of these things that we've talked about because that's what it takes to make sales and build customers is tap into these different layers of trust. So they're doing all of this because that's what's required, but they sort of nobody really takes advantage properly, like in an ethical, moral way of that trust that they've built with that customer, right? They just really undervalue what happens after the sale. They don't realize that like this whole process of creating that sale is to create that trust. And then once you actually deliver, like they see your advertising, it's good content, they have this little layer of trust. So that's the first layer. The second layer, they go to your website, it's aligned, it's very well designed, it speaks to them, their problems, their needs, it indicates that there's a solution here that can solve their problem. Hey, you're not alone means like you're not the only person with this problem and we've solved this problem. And so they're like, on the fence, I need a little bit more education. I'll sign up for your free doohickey so I can get maybe a discount or an incentive, but maybe I'm still not ready to buy, but thanks for the incentive. So they sign up, and then that welcome series or whatever starts to build that foundation of your brand story, who you are, why you're doing this. And then they finally purchase, they get a good experience of receiving the product, they unbox it. And then if they get a good quality product from you and it does make an impact towards achieving their goal or solving their problem, like you said, you have a lead for life if you do it right, because there's
Mm.
no sale ever occurs in a vacuum. Any single time we buy a product to solve a problem and it's good, and we start to see the vision that our problem can be solved. It's human nature. We immediately start thinking of what are other things that I could purchase to make this even better or faster or less stress free, or solve additional problems. It doesn't matter what you sell. You're not the only person selling to that customer. So you can actually add a lot more value to their lives by thinking of the entire customer journey. So once they purchase this one product, they're willing to take action to solve their problem. They're willing to take out their credit card and make a purchase. That's when
Mhm.
you have a hot prospect. Not because they buy. You have a customer, but you have the beginning of a relationship. And so one of the things that I like to do the only thing that I do is my specialized knowledge is helping people maximize the value of that customer by leveraging that trust that they have with them to increase their LTV, which obviously helps lower their customer acquisition rate in the long run. And so if you
Mhm.
can identify what else they're buying that they love that you don't sell, because nobody has enough time, money, or energy or resources to sell every single product or service that a customer will ever purchase along their
Yeah.
journey. So turns out your competitors, your indirect competitors, can become some of your best collaborators. And so a
Right.
lot of people, they overlook that value of trust that they built with the customer. They don't think about it after the fact. They just think about, hey, I want to sell more products that I sell to this customer. And so, a lot of people want to collaborate and work with other brands because you get this halo effect of being
Mm.
associated with these other brands. But
Mhm.
so rather than going to these other companies and saying, hey, you have a great product, we have a great product, let's trade these, I'll promote you, you promote me. That mentality of what can I get from this brand up front stops those deals from ever taking place. So if you go
Mm.
to another brand who you've identified that your customers buying this product, they're having a great experience, they've already done the product development, right? And they have great customer support, all of the logistics are dialed in. Rather than going through all of that process yourself, you can leverage that by surveying your customers, finding out what they're actually buying that helps them in addition to what you sell, and then bringing those products into your back end marketing to add a lot more value to the customer. And if they get a really good experience out of that, they had a good experience with you. 92% of customers, right? And you know this, you talked about this at Sub Summit. 92% of customers, when they're finally willing to buy because they're committed to solving their problem, they are open to additional recommendations for other products that will help them achieve their goals faster. And so if you can get those into their hands, now you've really done three major things. Number one, if they had a good experience with you and now they have another good experience with another company, you've just increased your customer loyalty because you're a curator. You're helping them sift and sort through all the noise. And then
Mhm.
obviously, because you have these deals, if you have a good company, quality product, a sizable list, you have purchasing power built into your customer base. You can negotiate pretty fair deals, win-win deals with these guys and send them the customer. They do all the order taking, the fulfillment, the processing of the credit cards, the customer service. You don't have any logistics or overhead in that process. You get a commission. That commission is straight to your bottom line. And we see companies, they actually produce more profit doing that many times than they do on their core business when they do it
Mhm.
right. And so if you can build that into the back end of your business, it gives you a halo effect because you're associated with these other brands. And the third thing is it really breaks up the monotony of your emails sometimes. Because customers, when they
True.
buy from you and you just keep giving them content about what you do, eventually they sort of get it. You
Yeah.
know, they open your emails and they're like, okay, you're going to talk
selling to
about
me
your
again.
company.
Yeah.
I get it. It's going to be about you, but I'm interested now that I bought your product. I'm interested in solving ancillary related products to this. And so if you send them some stuff like that, they get another reason to open your emails that's new and exciting and fresh because they have something to look forward to. So it helps
Totally.
with retention. Yeah. So
Should
that's
say,
my favorite thing.
imagine if you got an email from a brand that said 5 products we love that aren't ours, like just completely not self-serving, but
It
more of a
doesn't
like
take
you.
much. It doesn't take
Yeah.
much, right? Because if you have just one good company that you promote, you're sending 1 or 2 emails a month to promote them. And then that's once a month. If you can do that once a month for 12 months, you can really drive like easily. You could drive 20 to 30% more revenue. But the fun part is that revenue is profit. And
Yeah.
so, once you have a number of these partners going, maybe you do twice a month, like recommendation of the month. But so to break up that monotony of the recommendation of the month, every now and then, like you just said, you get maybe a grouped offer, our 5 best recommendations. And then so it gives them something like, oh, wow, this is awesome because you just saved me a lot of time. If I do a Google search on any of these, I'm going to get 100,000 plus results. I don't know what's good, what's bad, who to trust. You've done that work for me. Oh, and it's a good quality brand that I've seen around before. You guys are associated with that brand. That's so cool. So it does a lot of cool benefits.
Yeah. I think that's neat. And I mean, it kind of ties into something I talk a lot about that I didn't make this up. I heard this from Seth Godin. He said, it's better to find, rather than find more people for your products, find more products for your people. And we often spend so much time trying to find more people, but we have a pretty decent audience. We have a pretty decent list of customers. We need to find more products for our people, and that can be your own products by adding more complementary SKUs that you can sell, or through partners, which is a great
Yeah, or both.
suggestion. Where
Yeah.
or both 100%. It's not exclusive. Yeah.
Because one of the best ways, because a lot of times people will survey their customers and they'll be like, "What other categories of products are you interested in?" Or they'll think about their customer experience and try to identify what they're actually buying. They'll go, because smart brands, obviously, the ones that scale to 7, 8 figures, they realize like it's not just about acquiring new customers. You want to monetize the customer on the back end. But so they'll go through all of this investment in product development before knowing for sure that that product will work. And a lot of those products will fail. So sometimes, even if you find out exactly what your customers are buying, because that's what, that's one of the secrets to this is you don't survey them about what they might potentially buy, because they'll give you a lot of answers that might be on the right track, but it might be not on the right track. But if you find out specifically, what have you actually purchased in like the last 90 days to 180 days that, change your life, similar to what happened when you bought our product? How did something that helped you other than what we sell? You can identify, okay, this is probably going to be a big win if I promote this. But so you promote it. If it is a big win and you are interested in making new product SKUs, well, now you just got paid to do that market research. And you're pretty sure if you come out with your own, now you could do like a pre-order and you can you could literally fund all of your product development this way.
Yeah. Genius. Mark, this has been fantastic. Where can people go if they want to give me all the details of your podcast? I know you do some consulting. Where can people go to learn more about you?
Yeah, best way, if you'd like to learn, some things, 1 or 2 things that you can potentially use, good ideas are great, but if you want to move the needle, you need to implement. So I interviewed 28 leading experts so far. I'm on a journey to continue to do that as often. I want to interview all of the best guys in the game. And so I've got you in there on Sub Summit stage with Andre Rebrov
Yeah.
from Scentbird. I mean,
Yeah.
they only grew to 1 million members per month. You
Insane
might
when
know
you
a
think
thing or
about that.
two. Yeah, huge
Yeah.
company. Paul Chambers and you and Andre were on stage with me, giving your best tips. That was a panel of you three, so it was a 30-minute episode. But the rest of these episodes are 10 minutes. What's your most profitable tip, technique, strategy that's really, move the needle for your company because there's
Hmm.
brands or your clients if you're, an expert. And so that's 10-minute ecom success, like the number 10. 10-minute ecom with one M, success.com/J for anybody who listens to this. And then you sign up for that, you get the full series immediately, 28 episodes. But like I sort of said in the beginning, that can be like, even though they're 10 minutes, it can still be overwhelming because they're in
Hmm.
chronological order. So I made a little
Hmm.
index by topic. So depending on where you're at in your journey as a brand, maybe you need some foundations. Maybe you need to know your numbers. Maybe you need to identify areas of opportunity or drive traffic or convert or do some back end retention. Each one of these guys, they are a proven expert in their field, and you can go straight to that index and find what works best for you. So that's where I would
That's
send
awesome.
you. Yeah. And if you sign up for that,
Yeah.
obviously, right, I'm going to email you. And if you want to, if you have any questions for me, you can just respond to that email.
Awesome. I'll make sure those links are in the show notes as well.
Appreciate it.
Mark, thank you so much. This has been a ton of fun.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. It was exciting.
See, you almost said coming on. That's the host problem. All right. Take care.